Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. I'm your host, Diane Gardner, and I'm looking forward to today's topic. It's a topic that I don't talk about enough, and I need to be better about that. This topic can be a very big profit leak in home service businesses like plumbing and roofing and HVAC and electrical and home restoration, landscaping, all those different home service businesses. I see it in all of them that there is no one piece of this industry that is not affected by this. I see it in clients, whether they're here on the West Coast where I'm located or whether they're spread somewhere else across the US. I see it all the time. And it's a profit leak that most home service business owners aren't even thinking about. And I will tell you that it's not has nothing to do with the amount that you're paying for labor or what your team is or isn't doing, though I talk about those profit leaks quite a bit. It has nothing to do with how you purchase materials or what you pay for them or how you're recording them on your profit and loss statement. And that's another profit leak I talk about. It has nothing to do with your pricing, which is another profit leak that you've heard me talk about. It has everything to do with your income taxes. And as I'm recording this, we are finishing up tax season. It's been a busy one. We've done um, many returns for our most favorite clients, and we just love working with them and serving them. But I wanted to really bring out this as a profit leak. Over the years, I've worked with many HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, and other home service business owners all across the US. And I see businesses that are busy, revenue that's growing, sometimes by leaps and bounds. I see the owners, all of you guys out there, working so hard. And from the outside, your company looks extremely successful. But, and that's a big but, your bank balance doesn't always reflect all of your effort. And that's where tax season comes in because there's nothing more disheartening than to have worked your tail off for the whole year. You have a nice big healthy profit to show for it, and then the IRS and or your state takes a big chunk of it. And I've seen clients where they're paying up to 40 or 45% of that profit out to the taxing agencies. And that just breaks my heart when I see that. And that owner is sitting there going, how can I have worked so hard just to give all that money to the government? Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't pay taxes because we do need to. We need the infrastructure, we need the things that taxes go to pay for. But when you've worked so hard and you give that big chunk of money to the government, that hurts. It hurts in your future planning. It hurts in the capital that's available to run your business. It hurts in your personal life. And sometimes I see owners get very discouraged because of it. It's almost, they feel like they're being punished for working so hard. Well, I want you to know that this is a profit leak that can be fixed. So stick with me today and we're going to dig into this a little bit. The reason that it happens, and I know most of you are wondering, excuse me, how that just keeps happening. It feels like it happens regularly, almost year after year. How does this keep happening to me? Why can't I seem to get ahead of it? I'm making these big estimated tax payments and I still owe money when it's tax time. Well, when I talk about profit leaks, I talk about all types of profit leaks that result in money leaving your business unnecessarily. And when you hear the word tax planning, sometimes people automatically think, ooh, there's something wrong with that. Or is that illegal? Or is that shady? And I want to tell you that tax planning and the way that we do it here in my company is all about fixing those missed opportunities. It's definitely legal. Everything has been court tested, IRS approved, before we bring any tax saving strategies to our clients. And so today, I want you to move away from the mindset that says, I guess this is just what I owe, when your accountant or your tax preparer gives you the good or not so good news about how much you owe in tax. And I want to break or bust the myth that says taxes are just fixed. There's nothing that can be done. I'm just going to owe this amount of money every single year. And that's not true. There are so many different tax saving strategies out there, within the IRS code. Our Congress, our government wants you to take advantage of them. The problem is you may not be aware of most of them. Most accountants aren't aware of most of them. I know you often think that your accountant will let you know if there's something they can do to bring that tax bill down. I've heard this all the time. But here's what I've learned after decades of working in this profession is that most tax preparation work is reactive, not proactive. Most accountants are trained to record history, and they generally do it pretty well, but they're not trained to design the future. And that difference matters more than most business owners realize. Just a quick little example. I was working on a tax notice for a somewhat new client recently. And in looking at his tax return, his prior accountant let him pay $1 million a year in income tax over the last 3 years or so. That was the returns I had in front of me. They allowed him to pay that money. Soon as I saw that tax return, I went, oh my goodness, he could do this or this or this or this. And so I called him into my office and we sat down and we came up with a plan. Now, he only chose one of the items because this was new territory for him. He had never had an accountant who would look at his taxes and say, do you realize you have options? So now this coming year, I know he will want to dig deeper and look at a couple of those other options. But the option that he did choose will save him about $400,000 in tax when I file his 2025 income tax return. Well, that's a huge cry from the $1 million that he's been paying each year over the last 3 years. So the difference between an accountant who's only been taught to record history versus one who is invested in learning how to look forward, looking for strategies, belonging to a network where you have other strategies that you can learn about. I'd like to also talk briefly about what's the difference between tax preparation and tax planning. This is a topic that people get very confused about. Oftentimes, people are business owners engage an accountant or a tax preparer to prepare their tax return. And then they're dissatisfied because there was no conversation about tax savings or anything along those lines. The tax return just got done in the heat of tax season. Well, when you've engaged somebody to prepare your tax return, that's all you've engaged them to do was put the right numbers in the right boxes, prepare a return that meets with the compliance standards, and submit it on to the IRS and or state agencies. You have not engaged them to go further than that, especially not in the middle of tax season. Tax planning conversations happen outside of tax season, which is why I wanted to record this now, as you may or may not have written a nice, fat, healthy check to the IRS and or your state. When we're looking at tax planning, we want to ask questions of where do we think this business is going to land for the year? So I get an idea on how much taxable income we might be looking at. We want to look at the structure of the business. Is it an S Corp, a C Corp? Is it a multi-member LLC? What is its structure? And does its structure today meet the way it was set up however many years ago? Another question that we always ask is, are my owners paying the right amount of salary? Many years ago, when I was first starting to learn about tax planning and tax saving strategies, I had a guy named Ted over on the East Coast, and he was paying himself, I think it was about a $300,000 a year salary. Well, when I ran numbers, I was able to show him that if we back down the salary to a reasonable amount per the IRS's documentation and definition, that we could save him, oh, it was several $1,000s a year in payroll taxes. And then we did a combination of some salary and distribution. So he still got his big salary and he could brag to his friends. And we call that vanity salary. But he wanted to be able to brag to his friends out on the golf course that, he was taking this big salary out of his company, which was fine and well. He had a company that could afford it. But let's structure that so we're paying the least amount of taxes, and taxes can be payroll taxes as at the time that we're working on this. So that was just a real quick, easy strategy. And I know that strategy over several years of working with him saved him, oh, probably $150,000, $200,000 in tax because it was that big an amount that he was overpaying. Another question that we like to ask is this business missing particular deductions? Sometimes there's things that happen in your personal life that can result in tax deductions in your business life. And so we really like to go looking for those. Sometimes we really score, other times we don't. And then the big question is there a better way to do some of this? Is there a better way to package it so that you get some tax savings out of it? I'd like to say that tax preparation is required. We must file those tax returns every year. But tax planning is strategic. Tax planning is an investment in the future health of your business. Tax planning should happen throughout the course of the year, not just in February, March, or April. It should happen throughout the course. And here's a big problem I see is that most home service business owners have never experienced tax planning. They've only experienced tax preparation. Another huge leak in the tax planning area is when you go to sell your business. You do not have to pay income tax on every dollar that you get when you sell your business. There's so many strategies that will put money back in your pocket and allow you to invest it into something else. But people don't realize that, and they just pay what their accountant or their tax preparer tells them they need to pay. So I have a magic question for you. It's one of my favorites, and I've used it for so many years now. The question I want you to think about, take just a moment here, is this one. When was the last time that your accountant or tax professional came to you with some tax savings ideas? I'll repeat that. When was the last time your accountant or tax professional came to you with some tax savings ideas? Now, this is not because you asked them for some ideas, or this is not because you expressed that you were worried about coming up with the cash to be able to pay your tax bill. This is just because they're being proactive. They're paying attention. They're staying ahead of the game. And this is the type of account that says, hey, I've been looking at your situation, and here's a couple things that you could do to save money this year. Completely different than the accountant who just does your tax return and says next and gets the next person in line. Now, this is not to say that your accountant is a bad person, but it's because most accountants and tax preparers here in the US are trained to be compliance professionals, not proactive strategists. I know in my early years of this profession, I was pretty proud of myself for getting those tax returns done, getting them done right, and getting them done on time. I had no idea that there was another whole realm to this called tax planning. Now, home service business owners are especially vulnerable. Most of the time, my owners have come up through their trade. Maybe they worked for somebody else and decided to go out on their own. And I know that your days are really busy. Sometimes I have to work hard to corral you for a meeting. I know that you're running calls, you're managing your tax, you're dealing with your customers, You're trying to keep abreast of what you need for equipment and job materials. You're trying to keep the jobs moving so they don't get stacked up. Your days are beyond full. I get it. I know. I've worked with you guys for so many years. I know what your days are like. I also know that you didn't start your business because you wanted to study accounting or tax law. And that's why you've hooked up with an accountant of some sort. You assume your accountant will guide you, and sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And that reason they don't is because they don't always have the time, especially if you expect that kind of a service during the heat of tax season. They just don't have the time, or they don't have the training. They've not involved themselves in the world of tax planning and what it takes to, with all the training, the additional extra training over and above what they need for the compliance side. And sometimes they just don't have that proactive mindset. They're a compliance person. And so I see home service business owners that have been in business for 10, 15, 20 years who have never had a real tax planning conversation with their accountant or tax preparer. And that's a problem because the longer you go without tax planning, the more money leaks out of your business over and over and over again. So let me give you a couple examples of the kinds of profit leaks that I see all the time. I see wrong entity structure. Oftentimes, you are set up in a particular entity, maybe when your business was smaller, and you may have outgrown it by this point in your career. I see sometimes a business who's in an S corporation who maybe shouldn't be there. Or maybe they need a supplemental secondary entity to go along with that S corporation, depending on the situation and what's going on in their lives. I see many home service business owners that have never had their accountant or tax professional prepare a tax projection for them throughout the course of the year. Well, if nobody's running those numbers, how do you know what's coming? At tax time, it's like a freight train coming through a tunnel. You don't see it till all of a sudden you see the light, and it's too late at that point. There's no time to make changes once the year has closed. I see home service businesses that do not have a strong retirement strategy. Maybe you're in one of those states that requires a 401k plan, and those plans tend to suck. They tend to favor the employee over you, the employer, and they usually are not good for your business. I see home service business owners missing out on family payroll strategies, or not paying attention to the timing of income and expenses, or no coordination between their profit planning and their tax planning. And here's the key point: none of these items are illegal, and none of these things are tricks. They're just simply normal, legal, everyday strategies that business owners are allowed to use. But it's only if somebody's looking for them. If nobody is looking for them, the money continues to leak out of your business. And when money's leaking out of your business, you're flushing it down the toilet. And we don't want to do that. So when we have these types of leaks, we're impacting your cash flow. And so this isn't just about taxes. It does affect the cash flow in your business because you're making estimated payments and you're paying big chunks of money for income tax. And when you're overpaying your taxes, you tend to have less money for payroll, which keeps you from hiring maybe that A team. You have less money for the equipment that you need. Maybe it's your vans or your trucks or other kinds of equipment that you've purchased. You have less money for servicing your debt payments, which means you stay in debt longer than you need to. You have less money for reserves. I see very few companies that come to me with a nice, healthy emergency fund. Very few do. Very, very few. And when you're letting cash leak out your company, generally you're not paying yourself what you're worth for the value that you bring to this company. You're not funding a retirement plan, which benefits you as well as your team, But our main benefit is for you so that you walk away at the end with a nice retirement plan. It also means you have less money for your family and you have less freedom because you're so tied up in your business. And these same owners think that their problem is pricing or marketing or employees. And I will say that, yes, those things are part of this. They are definite leaks. But sometimes that problem is they're simply paying more taxes than they need to. And it's not because they did anything wrong, but it's because nobody helped them plan. So when you plug that profit leak, which is our overpaying in taxes, you don't just save on taxes, but you free up cash that allows you to put that cash back in your company year after year after year. And over time, that can really add up. It might be as small as 10,000 a year or 20,000 a year or 50,000 a year. But if you look at that over 5 to 10 years, that becomes a big number. That equates to trucks that you could have been purchased or buildings, and now we own the building instead of renting it. That equates to a retirement plan, and it gives you options when we can put that money back in your bank account. I have a client on the East Coast who, over the last 3 years, has saved $415,266 with just one tax planning strategy. And when I look at that, I'm like, way to go, guys. Thank you for listening and being willing to check out and explore something that they had never heard of before, and they weren't necessarily super comfortable with it up front. Took them a little while to realize that, yes, this is a legal tax saving strategy. And this money has been money that's been put back in their bank account over the last 3 years because they didn't have to take a distribution to pay that income tax. I have another client here on the West Coast in Arizona who this current tax year that we're talking right now is going to save $116,169 in tax savings by implementing one single tax saving strategy we came up with last fall when we met. That's a lot of money to put back in their business. That's money they would be paying out in estimated payments and income tax. Now, I would like to say that most successful home service business owners I work with don't wait until March to think about taxes, but sadly, that's not usually the case. I would love for you to be thinking about taxes during the rest of the year, wanting to review numbers, wanting to do projections, thinking about your structure and looking ahead. I want you to be thinking about this so that you are thinking like a CEO, not just somebody who's running a business and creating yourself a job. So I want you to be thinking about what would it look like if you had a proactive tax advisor sitting on your financial team. That proactive tax advisor would be asking you questions such as, what are your financial goals? What are your personal goals? What should your income look like this year? What about next year? How much profit do you want this year? How should this business be set up? How should it be structured? What can we still do before the end of the year? And that's a completely different relationship than working with a compliance-based accountant who just looks at your taxes or looks at your accounting or bookkeeping information and prepares a tax return. And that can make a humongous difference in your profits. So I want to say to you, if your business is growing, but your bank account isn't growing as fast as you want it to, if you feel like you're working too hard for the amount of money of which you're actually keeping, if tax season feels like a surprise to you on a somewhat regular basis, you may have a tax profit leak. And the good news is, this is one of the most fixable profit leaks that I see out there. It doesn't get fixed overnight, and we don't use gimmicks to fix it. But with the right planning and the right conversations and the right advisor looking ahead instead of looking backward, this can be fixed. Because when you're working with a compliance only tax preparer or accountant, it's the same as driving your car by looking in the rearview mirror. You'd be going backwards all the time. You're only looking at what's behind you, not what's in front of you or out ahead of you. And we want to shift your thinking and your mindset to be looking at what's in front of you, what's ahead of you. What can we be doing proactively to change the outcome of what has always been happening? And that is exactly why I spend so much money and so much time helping home service business owners plug those profit leaks in their business, including the ones that are hiding on your tax return. Because when you keep more of what you earn, everything in your business gets easier. You're not fighting so hard for the next dollar. And that's what we're really after. And that's what really counts. You've heard me say over and over and over again, I'm not impressed with your top line revenue. I am more impressed with how much of that you're actually keeping. How much is your bottom line profit? What is your gross profit amount or gross profit percentage? That's the only money that we have available to spend. So why not sharpen this up and let's start growing your profits, but yet not punish you by having to pay so much more in taxes? So, once again, it's not how much money you make, but how much you keep. If you have found value in today's episode, please tell a friend, please tell a colleague, leave a review, share this with another home service business owner, like and subscribe, especially out on our YouTube channel. We're really trying to grow that channel. So go check us out on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you would like help identifying profit leaks in your business, including tax profit leaks, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you're looking for something quick, we do have our 15 profit leaks download where you can look at this guide and see how many of these profit leaks you have in your business. So be sure and download our 15 common profit leaks guide. But for now, if you've just felt the bite of writing a big check to the IRS and or your state, give me a call. Reach out. Say, hey, Diane, I'd like to have a conversation. I'd be happy to meet with you and see if we can't come up with some saving strategies for you. All right, until the next time, this is Diane Gardner. I'm your host of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. Have a blessed day. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye bye.